Welcome to the Mile High Podcast. This is your host, Dr. Daniel Knowles. Thank you for joining us from whatever altitude you're at. We're at the altitude of 5,280 feet, Mile High territory, where we expect to see you in September of 2023. Right now, I am so grateful to have as a guest on the podcast my good friend, Carolyn Griffin. She's a really dedicated, passionate chiropractor. She's dedicated to enhancing the overall health of her practice members. She has a very personalized approach with every person she takes care of. She's been serving her community 27 years at Back to Health Chiropractic with 2 locations in Santa Clarita Valley. She's ICPA certified. She really has great specialized care for pregnant women and babies. And she's just an incredible soul. And so thank you for joining us today, Dr. Carolyn.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Daniel. I'm excited to be here with you today.
Well, we are super excited to have you here. First of all, I've known you for quite a while. You spoke at Mile High way back when.
Way back.
And we've been good friends, but a lot of people on the podcast may not know you. Can you share a little bit about how you found your way into chiropractic?
Yeah. So when I was 17, which was a million years ago, my dad had a double hernia operation, and he ended up loving golf so much that he went out, took his first swing, and he actually threw out his back, as they say. And so he worked at Rockwell, which was a big aerospace industry in California down here. And parking lots are huge. He was like struggling so much. He was sharing with me that he'd have to sit on the bumpers of cars to get to his office. And his friend, his coworker, said, "You should go to a chiropractor." And my dad literally was like, "No way, they're quacks." So he was not into it.
Mm-hmm.
He suffered. And finally, when, he went the medical route, I guess PT, whatever he did, and it wasn't working, he went back to that friend and said, "Okay, what's the name of your doctor? Because this is not getting any better." So he ended up going to the chiropractor, getting adjusted, getting great care, and he started feeling better. So here I am. I was 17, getting ready to graduate high school, and I still had no idea what I wanted to do. And what do you think, Dad? And he goes, "Why don't you become a chiropractor?" I was like, "What? What's that?" So anyway, that's literally how it started. So I remember back in the day, I was opening up the yellow pages. Remember that?
Yes, I remember that.
I called a couple of doctors, and I was like, "I'm thinking about being a chiropractor. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions?" And they're like, "You know what? Better yet, why don't you come in and follow me around for the day?" So that's what I did. I went in these offices, I checked out what they were doing, and they were healing people, back pain like my dad had, but other things that I had no idea chiropractic was capable of taking care of. And so it was this past December, it's been 27 years. I've been doing this a long time now, like you, and seen some great miracles in our office, and just loving what I've been doing. And I just feel like I can keep going. Like, I don't even feel like I've peaked. You know what I mean? Like, it's so great. And I think it was you posted something on Facebook, like, "How long have you been a chiropractor?" Or,
Oh, yeah.
remember that? And I was like, look at these guys, and they're like 40 years, 50 years, and they're still going. And yeah, we're like youngins still.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It is. So that's how I got into it. And, the cool thing for me is, I did go to a LACC, which obviously don't hold that against me, but I couldn't even say the word subluxation back then. That we were taught segmental dysfunction.
Right.
And when I got out, I was taught CM6 visits, refer. And
Right.
that was what I was taught. So I ended up in this office, and I did an associateship, and it was this office in the Ella Valley, and I was an associate for like 3.5 years, and I'm so grateful for it, because they took me to a training before I could even start. They said, "You need to go to a training, and we're going to take you to Arizona, and you're going to train with Dr. Fred Schofield. You need to meet this man. You need to be, And so at the young age of whatever, in October of 1995, here I go, before I even graduated chiropractic school, they take me to Arizona. I go to the seminar, and it was intense. So they took me to a seminar to see Dr. Fred, and he started talking about innate. He started talking about universal intelligence. and how the body can heal itself. And I've never heard that stuff. It was literally mind blowing coming from the school where, I couldn't even say subluxation. So that definitely set the course for me to, have the type of practice I have today, where we're able to take care of our community and actually help heal them and live, get them to have their body function better, as opposed to, all right, we adjusted you 6 times, let's refer you out,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right.
You mentioned that question on social media about how long you've been in practice. I had an experience just the other week, and I do lots of things now in chiropractic. And I went in on Thursday. It was one of the shifts that I most often see people, and it was magical. I mean, I was taking care of it. I was like, man, this is just the most fun of all the things I do professionally, being around practice members. What lights you up taking care of people now, 27 years in?
I think for me, the joy is still that we are able to do it with our hands. Like the magic is right here. And I just feel like, when you go in and that person is complaining, and it's, they're complaining of headaches, back pain, or whatever they've got, or they're just there for their weekly adjustment, and you go in, and let's say it's something where they're complaining of something and they've tried everything and they've gone everywhere and they spent, lots of money and it's always failed, and they're just like feeling defeated. And you go in and I don't mean to sound like, we're dismissing them, but it's like, yeah, we got this. You know what I mean? Like, we've seen this a million times. So I go in and I just give them hope. And I love the fact that they feel like I'm in the right place, and they get the care and they start to get better. And it's just like going back to what happened to my dad. It's like, it took that from him saying chiropractors are quacks, because that was his paradigm back in the day, to have his experience, to having his daughter become one. That's pretty, that's kind of crazy, right? I didn't have the background you did of, my dad was one, and, I didn't have anything. I had no background. I had, let me see if this is what I want to do. And it turned out to be the right choice. Thank God.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's what fires me up, is just that day to day with those patients.
And how do you feel chiropractic and being a chiropractor has blessed your life?
So for me, the way I see it is, what you put out, you get back, and that's with everything in life. What you put out there in the universe is going to come back to you. So the more good you put out, the more good that's going to come back to you. And what I found is the way it's blessed me is with my children. I was on the path of, I don't know if we're allowed to talk vaccines and stuff here, but I was on the path. Okay.
Go for it.
Maybe I want to vaccinate. Maybe I want to do this. Even, going through LACC, that was still the mindset. It wasn't until later that I was, maybe this isn't what I want to do. And had it not been for chiropractic, I probably would have vaccinated my children. And, I would have been living a different life today based on, what my old ways of how I grew up, military background. I had to get vaccinated every time I moved countries. So I've been shot up quite a bit. And, but I didn't do that with mine. And, kids are now following in my footsteps, because for us, this chiropractic wasn't just, a 9 to 5 where I go to the office and take care of patients and I come home and this is what I do. It's a way of life for our family. It's how I taught them things from, day one all the way through. It's the adjusting. And even if my kids decided they weren't going to be chiropractors, what I was teaching them was how to adjust. I was teaching them since they were younger, in their teens, because I thought in my mind, even if they didn't want to be a chiropractor, if one of their children has a fever in the middle of the night, they're going to be able to take care of them. And that's what I wanted them to be able to have, that hands-on experience. So with my son now in chiropractic school and, second quarter at Life West, he already has great hands. He's going to get better. He's got good hands. They're not great, but he can adjust. And I think that's super important to be able to give our kids, our chiropractic kids, those tools, even if they don't become a chiropractor in their own life.
Well, and what you said about being a way of life, how you think as a chiropractor is different. How you think about the world. How has becoming a chiropractor, and obviously you grow as a chiropractor, evolve as a chiropractor through practice and through years. How has How does Carolyn think now, 27 years as compared to Carolyn pre-chiropractic school?
Yeah, I don't know if it's easier or if it's just different. Like, I think what happens is the one thing that I feared, and I don't like having fears, but this is one thing I thought about a lot when I was a younger chiropractor, is I didn't want to be that crusty old man sitting behind the desk that just kind of like aged with their practice and never did anything new. Like, they didn't, update their education. They didn't learn what the latest things were. And I know that with chiropractic, we have our philosophy. It's based on our hands. It's based on the adjustment, but your practice still needs to, you still need to evolve your practice, or else you're going to kind of be, stuck, I guess. And so for me, it went, like we talked about the yellow pages earlier before we started hitting record, of how I got into chiropractic. And we went from yellow pages to what? Facebook ads. Like, you got to know how things are different. We've got social media. How do we get the word out there? So it's kind of evolving in that way, and not just getting stuck in, this is how I used to do it. This is what worked in the, early 90s or mid 90s. And now, or whatnot, you have to be able to change with the times and make yourself relevant. But you can still make yourself relevant by still keeping your core of what chiropractic is. And I think that's what's key.
Yeah, that's super important. Super important. What advice would you give recent graduates?
Recent graduates, I think I've seen a few come through, and they've been preceptors and postceptors in my office. And the biggest thing that I've noticed is their lack of adjusting skills. I've noticed their lack of philosophy. I've noticed a lack of like ambition and like grit and that drive to want to like do whatever it takes. So what I've seen, and this is not every single person, obviously, I'm not going to put a big broad brush on this whole thing with students.
Right.
There's a few that I feel like they are wanting so much more coming out of school than what they are willing to put out there.
Interesting.
You know what I mean? And so I feel like, I think the best advice I can give is, number one, become an associate. And the reason why is you're going to get years of it. That learning curve will be cut in half. You're going to learn how to adjust very quickly. You want to get your hands on as many people as possible. And maybe you did in school, and maybe you're the best adjuster in school, but you're still going to have more to learn. Like, I still want to learn. I still go to adjusting seminars. I want to be better because I know that I can be better, and I want to continue to learn. But I would say the best advice I can give is become an associate, get under someone's wing and learn as much as you can so that you can serve your community when it's time. And just realize that exchange, and maybe this is just me being a little old school with it, is the amount of energy I put into an associate. I want them to be better than me. Like, I'm not saying, okay, you're my associate, peace out, I'm going on vacation now. I put time and effort to train them. I want them to be great adjusters. I want to, talk about present time consciousness, intention, making sure that you're, tapping in before you adjust that patient. Like, there's so many things that they don't know. They just go in there and move the boat. You know what I mean? They're just mechanical, and they have no intention behind their hands. And there's a loss between, they might have the brain and hands going because they're thinking that through, but there's no heart. And I think that's the biggest thing that's missing in the students coming out, is they're missing a lot of heart. And they really need to have that head, heart, hands connection. It's all of it. And if they're missing one link, maybe they have all heart, but they can't adjust. Maybe they're thinking it's too hard and they can't adjust. But if you have all of it, they're going to be magical. And that's what it takes these days.
So, that's so wise. And that's such wisdom. I have something else I want to ask you next that spurred from what you just said. Before I ask you that, I do want to say, if people wanted to either be an associate or preceptor with you, is that something that they could do if they wanted, after hearing this podcast, wanted to get to know you? Is there a way they could do that?
They can find me on. They can find me on Facebook. They can reach out. Where I love mentoring. I mean, I've had a few come through my office and then find them the path that they need to go down, or the stay they can stay. But I think it's important to pour into them because there is so much that is missing for the students coming out. Now the schools do a great job, but there's I had a good education through LACC, but I was missing a lot, right? All the and everything. And these kids that are getting some of that, but I think COVID did a disservice to a chunk of students that went through because with it being all online, there was a lot of the hands-on.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
So something super important. Now the profession as a whole the percentage of male to female in chiropractic has completely shifted. My wife tells me all the time that when she went to chiropractic school at Sherman, it was like 80% male. Now, for example, I don't know all the schools, but Sherman has more females than males in attendance. So that's a huge shift for our profession. What was it like raising kids and running a practice for you?
Tough, but doable. And if I break it down and say, how did I do that? Like, I don't know how I did that, but I will say that, I'm part of the women's group in chiropractic, and I see kind of the questions that get asked. And, one of the questions is like, how much time did you take off when you had your baby? And I did not have the luxury of taking a ton of time off. I took 3 weeks off with my son and 4 weeks off with my daughter. And I was the one who had to come back and start adjusting. Now, I didn't leave on with a babysitter. I was thankfully blessed to be able to bring my children in the office with me. That's what I did. I nursed between patients. I changed diapers. I brought in a mother's helper to help me play with my son and daughter during those times. But I still was mom. And what I ended up doing, and this was a really tough beginning for me, is my husband and I ended up buying a home, our first house. I opened my practice and I got pregnant all within 6 months. And that was intense. So for me, it was like checking the boxes, a little too quickly, and wasn't sure what that was going to look like. But we got to the point where my husband was working for Ernst & Young, which was at that point a big 5 accounting firm. Serious hours, like 16-hour days. My son would be asleep when he took off, and when he came home, he'd be asleep. So he really missed his first year of life. And when we went on a vacation when my son turned a year old, and when we were like, oh, this is what dad looks like, you know what I mean? I get to see dad. We literally that week made the decision. When he came home, he went into the firm and he gave 2 weeks notice immediately, and he became our office manager ever since. And
oh wow,
yeah, so he's been Mr. Mom / office manager for Back to Health Chiropractic Center, and that was 21 years ago.
Wow.
So it's truly a family business for us. It's truly a lifestyle for us. And it was scary times because it's like, could we make this happen on our own? I mean, I was had my own practice for a couple of years at that point, and we did it, and would not have had it any other way. So yeah, a lot of evolution and a lot of growing. And as a mom, I think it's the best profession ever. You can take as much time off as you want or as little. I think it's whatever works for that woman and the mom making that decision.
Yeah, I didn't have that experience because obviously I'm married to a chiropractor, so we did that together. But that's a question that comes up so often,
Yes.
and I understand the concern and the question and how do I do it. So I'm glad that you have that advice for people. With now 27 years of taking care of people, how do you feel? What do you feel about what you see in the profession politically, where it is, where it needs to go, how we can right the direction of that? What are your thoughts about that?
I think it's always been divisive. I think there's always been like this group, that group, as far as thoughts and where it should go. I would love to just get the leaders in the profession all in a room and literally just talk. You know what I mean? And like, everyone, and this is all with respect, of course, but there's a lot of egos and there's a lot of all of these things. And honestly, if you make it about the profession and not about yourself, things can go pretty far. So let me give you an example. Like, I was talking recently with my daughter turned 20 just like a little bit ago, and we were all out to dinner, and her best friend was with us. And my daughter's birth came up as far as like how I had her at home. And her friend was like, well, how did you do that without any drugs? And I basically said, when you make it not about yourself and about your baby, it's very easy to make the decision not to put drugs in your body, because it's not about me. I can take the pain, and I know it's temporary. And it was all about giving my daughter the best head start in life.
Mm-hmm.
Can do that same thing with chiropractic. And we can say, you know what? It's not about me, all the egos, and it's about the profession, and that's our baby, so to speak, right? Then we can maybe move together forward as opposed to all our little islands. I think there's so much that we can share. There's so many brilliant minds in our profession. There's so many smart people, way smarter than me. And I know that if we can get those guys with the people with the big hearts and all of us together and just say, here's what we think we should do, and this is what's going to make the best difference for our profession to move forward and actually, be top of mind instead of the fringe alternative, that would be huge.
It's interesting for a healing art and healing profession that is about communication and connection. It seems like those are two things we don't do well as a profession, and it's regardless of what type of chiropractor you are, communication and connection are part of what's happening, and we don't thrive in that area politically or educationally, or even with our students, unfortunately. So it would be great to see that change. Well, before we wrap up, is there any last message you'd like to share for chiropractors or chiropractic students?
Chiropractic students, I love the students, especially since my son's in school now, and I'm actually going to be going to visit him in a couple of weeks, and I'm going to get a group of his friends together, and we're going to pull out the adjusting table, and we're going to just show them what's up. I'm excited about that. That's going to be a fun weekend. But what I would share with them is to, I know that the schools are all about prepping you to open your own practice right out of school. I know they're wanting you to succeed from right out of the gate, and I think that's great. But there is a lot that's missing. And I think if they were to become associates, and it's not even in mine, I'm not trying to I'm just saying in general, I got so much out of it. I know that my associates gotten a lot out of it, and the preceptors and postceptors have gotten a lot out of it. I think if they just go into established offices to where they can get their hands on a lot of people in a short amount of time, number one, their skill set's going to go up for adjusting. Make sure that they have that confidence, because even if they go to all these seminars and they learn how to close, which I don't love that word anyway.
I'm not a fan of it either.
I'm not a fan. I like get an inspired yes. Doesn't that better? Like, get an inspired yes from your patients. And if they are able to, learn all the ways to convert, that's great. But you still need to be able to deliver the goods. If you can't deliver the goods, then they're not staying anyway. So I think get your hands strong as fast as you can. And even if, you think you're a great adjuster coming out of school, you can be better. And if you get your hands on, 500 a week, you're going to be great in a very short amount of time, because by getting to that level on your own, for some might be quick, for others, it takes a lifetime. And so you can get to that point in a short amount of time and get those hands super confident so that they can deliver the goods. When it's time to open their own practice, they'll be a success.
Wow, just so awesome. Well, I want to thank you for serving your community for 27 years, for serving the chiropractic profession, for serving chiropractic students, and really having a life of service and making chiropractic a way of life. I really value how you show up in the world. I know so many other chiropractors do. So I really want to acknowledge you and thank you for that. And keep changing spines, lives, and minds. If you enjoyed this particular episode, make sure you hit subscribe, whether it be on iTunes or Stitcher or YouTube. Make sure you hit subscribe, or on the Mile High app. And thank you so much Dr. Carolyn, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Daniel. I appreciate it.
We're grateful for you, and everyone who's here, make sure you decide to just pull the trigger and rise up to Mile High. There's nowhere else you want to be in September other than on higher ground. So we'll see you at Mile High 11. Rise up to milehigh.com. We will see you then.